Georgia and Clemson are about a week away. Dean Legge, Matt DeBerry, another edition of Riding Home. Matt, there's been two scrimmages. The Dogs have played okay in one and perhaps a little bit better in the other. They're still sort of a healthy 3-point underdog, although I'm going to check that right now. What is the biggest thing right now coming into this game with Clemson from your perspective?
Well, I think their two biggest strengths on their team are their defensive line, which may be the best in college football. I think you can make the argument that Georgia's could be the best in college football. And their wide receiver core, they're going to be out with, or they're missing like their fourth best wide receiver. They have maybe the best trio of receivers in all of college football. That's going to be a really, really tough matchup, especially now with Tyke Smith, the number one, star guy in the country really from last year. He's going to be out. You've got, some veteran guys there that need to step up. You've got nice safety play and experience there, but you got to find some cornerbacks who can lock down these bigger physical out. So I think wide receiving core and their defensive line are the two advantages that they really have in this game. Everything else is kind of up in the air. Maybe it's hard to give them the advantage at quarterback because he only played or started one game last year for them. So it's tough to give them an edge there. But if there's two advantages where I give Clemson, it's in those two areas.
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain that Clemson's defensive line is better than Georgia's, but it is a very good defensive line for sure. I think if you want to make the case that they're better, I think you've got a pretty good case. The receivers are certainly better at this second in the season because Georgia's so banged up, and I think the matchups are what you look at and say, hey, you're not playing receivers against receivers, you're playing receivers against DBs, and right now Georgia is out a defensive back that they would like to have in there. I don't think there's any shutdown corners anymore, man. I don't think those really exist in college football anymore. One thing I was talking about with an old friend of mine, Roy Philpott, who is an ESPNer, but was on radio yesterday in Greenville area, Clemson area. He was talking about does it matter for the loser of this game? And I said, I think it does. I think it does for a couple of different reasons. I mean, first of all, if you're whoever loses this game, the narrative is going to be extremely negative, man. For Georgia, it will be a loss in a big game to start the season, and you can't mess up from that point forward. For Clemson, I think they will have lost several big games in a row at that point. The ACC championship was a big game, so I don't know if I would say it would be 5 in a row, but it would be the Ohio State game, the SEC, the LSU championship game, the Notre Dame game on the road, and then of course they won the ACC championship game. So it would be a black mark for them too. What do you make of this game for the loser of the game?
It's definitely a setback, but the season isn't over either way. If you're Clemson and you lose to Georgia, I mean, if you go back and look at their schedule, it's always easy. This might be the easiest they've ever had it. They're missing North Carolina, Notre Dame,
Right.
and Miami. I mean, come on. If they beat Georgia, they can sleepwalk their way, to the ACC title game. Georgia, obviously, like you said, they have to run the table. If they beat Clemson, though, they should be able to kind of, I don't want to say sleepwalk.
Are you really think Georgia's going to go undefeated? I don't.
No, I can't remember the last time they did. So
1982.
there's always one game, thank you, that trips them up. You'd like to have it in the very beginning, the first game of the season,
That's
so
true.
you can continue to get better and better. Again, each year is different on who gets in that Final Four spot. We don't know how it's going to be determined, but you definitely still want to be the hot team and one of the 4 best teams at the end of the year, not necessarily at the beginning of the year. So you'd rather lose the first game of the season than a game in November.
Well, I think that Georgia's lost the game in November and gone on to play for the national championship. I think Clemson has lost Halloweenish, maybe. I know they lost the week of a Georgia-Auburn game, so they've lost in November and gone on to play for the national championship. I think they won the national championship that year. So you can lose late and still be okay, which means you can lose the first game and still be okay. I think
Not ideal, but you're still.
It's never ideal to lose, right?
Yeah.
I think the problem for Georgia is if they don't win the SEC championship, they're not going to get in. And
You're right.
That's it's what it is.
if they beat Clemson and look great the rest of the way and lose to 7 by Alabama, I guess it depends on other teams' record in the country,
Yeah.
but you still would have to look at Georgia at that point and still being a top 4 team. But there's just so much, as we know, that can go in and out. But if they beat Clemson, they're in a really good spot to make that Final Four as long as they finish out the rest of the regular season. And Clemson is by far the best team they're going to play in the regular season. You get that win in Charlotte, and the team has to be feeling great. The staff has to be feeling great at that point. And the only game that they might be able to lose is to Florida if Florida is better than we think.
Well, Florida could certainly be better than people think. Arkansas, Missouri, Auburn. These are all games Georgia could lose. I don't have Clemson's schedule in front of me. They could lose to NC State in theory, but I think for Clemson, if they lose this game, they do have to be undefeated. Like there's no other. They can't lose any other game, and there's no other game really they should come close to losing. I don't even know if they'll be a single digit favorite in any game for the rest of their season. But to me, Matt, this is going to come down to the execution of the offense for both teams, the passing game for both teams, and a little bit for Georgia if they have the ability to move the ball on the ground at all. Clemson it's a really good defensive line. Don't get me wrong, they are, but their defense has been in losses has been really not good. When you think about the loss to Notre Dame, they gave up over 40 points. The loss to Ohio State, they gave up 50 something. Is that right? Or is it 40? I know it was over 40.
I think so.
The
But
loss to,
good quarterbacks do well against Clemson's
well,
defense. If you know what you're doing,
that's what I want to ask is, Ian Book's a good quarterback, but they scored 40 and then scored like 10. Is JT Daniels better than Ian Book? Because he's not better than Justin Fields and Joe Burrow.
he's not as dynamic and he can't run, but I would say his arm is better. He's got a stronger arm, probably a little more accurate arm, more of an actual quarterback, whereas Ian Book is a better athlete, I think. But Ian Book made plays, and he made a lot of throws that would surprise a lot of people. JT Daniels is going to have to do that against a defense that's going to be coming after him. We know he can take a sack or two. He's got the football. The last thing they need is, a strip sack fumble or him, throwing into double coverage to not take a sack and then they turn the ball over.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is something that talked about over on Dog Post. And if you're not a member, we're kind of running out of time for you to sign up. This deal is not going to last forever. We're going to have a link at the bottom to where you can sign up. But this was something that was brought up over on the website about DJ Uiagalelei's performance in the two games that he really was the quarterback for, which was the loss to loss to Notre Dame, and the not ideal performance to Boston College. He really, I mean, he didn't have any interceptions. He didn't run a lot, particularly against Notre Dame, but he was still over 65% in both of those games. It wasn't him. Okay, he wasn't the problem, but they didn't. What happened in those games that he started that he? I don't know.
I thought he played really well against Notre Dame. He looked like
He did.
Ben Roethlisberger out there. He's not, galloping for 15, 20 yards when the play breaks down, but he is a big dude back there. He's hard to bring down. He's got a rocket arm, and he can still complete a pass with a guy on him. He's great in the pocket that I saw against a tough Notre Dame defense. He was slinging it, and I think he's going to sling it on Georgia's defense. They're going to get their yards through the air. They're going to have success there. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball much at all, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's got 50-plus pass attempts, especially if they are to be down at any point in the second half. They're going to have to use him, and he's going to have to win the game with his arm. They've got plenty of weapons. I think they're going to have some success through the air, and I think he's going to have load up on the stat sheet a little bit. I still think whoever forces the most turnovers is probably the team that's going to win. If Georgia can, force him to throw a pick or maybe get that one forced fumble that they need, could really turn the game around.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to go in and throw 2 or 3 interceptions. But I will tell you that what happened in those two games was Clemson couldn't run the ball.
Right.
So against Notre Dame up there, they had 34 yards rushing total. That's with Travis Etienne on the team. Against Boston College at home, they had 106 total yards. That's just not good enough, and that's why they were in that game late, losing. I mean, they were losing at the half, 28-13, which is not the end of the world, and then they were down, I think, 26-28. Now the defense threw a shutout in the second half for Clemson, but that you still don't want to leave it all up to your quarterback. I mean, JT Daniels and Georgia survived against Mississippi State. Then they go to Cincinnati, and I would say they survived Cincinnati, a team that is it defensively is going to look similar to what Clemson is like. I mean, I think
They were tough.
overall it may be that Clemson is that Cincinnati's a better defense, but the front four, I think it's certainly Clemson is better. But overall, maybe Cincinnati had a better defense. But that's what you're going to be dealing with. And the point, I can't, Las Vegas thinks this game is going to be 25-24. They think it's going to be really low scoring. And we keep hearing about these offenses, and we hear about the defenses too, Matt. But if it's a low scoring game, I think if you're Georgia, you got to be like, oh, all right.
I think it's going to be a low scoring first half. Then the offenses are going to make some adjustments and maybe sling it around a little bit more in the second half. You're going to have some busted coverages, busted plays eventually. I mean, these offenses know what they're doing to get guys in position to make plays, especially through the air. I don't think it's going to be a game where these teams are running all over each other, milking the clock. There's going to be a lot of plays in the air. Their running back group is not all that great.
No.
Len J. Dixon, former 3-star from Taylor County, Kobe Pryor, 3-star from Cedartown. Those are going to be the two guys who get the most carries from what I've heard. DeMarcus Bowman, maybe the most talented back, is now at Florida. So that was a big loss for them too. So they're going to have to make some plays, and a lot of them through the air to beat Georgia, I think. And they have the ability to do that, but we'll see how good this Georgia secondary is. And again, they're going to have to get after the passer too.
Yeah.
They've got Adam Anderson, Nolan Smith. The pieces are there to get after the passer, and that's only going to help the secondary, obviously.
You don't get after the passer, Matt, if you're not in third down. I mean, if that's the other thing is if first and 10 is no problem, and really second and 10 is not the end of the world, but third and 10 then that becomes problematic. So you're gonna have to run a little bit if you're Clemson and Georgia too. I mean, it's not like Georgia is going to be the
Well, they got the backs that they want to be able to run,
yeah,
or
but
at
if you
least get
can't
them in
open,
space.
if you can't open lines, they had those guys last year against Mississippi State and Cincinnati, and I understand that what Mississippi State was doing, but against Cincinnati and them, I think this game is probably going to be won in the trenches, and I realize that this is a 7-on-7. We've become a college football world of 7-on-7, and that would favor Clemson to me. But I think that this game is going to be won in the trenches because, Georgia's going to try to run, and Clemson's going to have to run a little. You can't go out and win games with 500 yards passing and no rushing because that sounds to me like you've lost the game.
Yeah, I do expect Georgia to have a little bit more success, but like you said, that the interior offensive line, they're going to need a healthy Warren Erickson, as healthy as possible. But it's still going to be tough. But I expect Kenny McIntosh to have a nice little day out of the backfield, catching the ball. I think JT is going to have to go to his safety valve a little bit and hit those backs, especially if he gets pressure early on. So he's be looking at those guys a lot.
I'd be okay
and I
with
think
that
most
if I were
Georgia fans would be too. If you're struggling to get Kendall Milton the touches that people want, and he's struggling to get the run game, they're going to throw it to him. They're going to have to get those guys involved, especially with the receiving core being, still a little banged up. Hopefully we can see a healthy Marcus Rosemey, Dominic Blaylock, and those types be able to help. We still don't know, if Eric Gilbert's going to travel with the team. Right now, I don't think so, but who knows? We don't know. That's still up in the air. So these running backs have to be able to have an impact out of the backfield in the passing game, and I think we're going to see a good bit of that.
Well, I think I always do this, and it's People ask me, who do you think's going to win? Well, I typically, if you'll just let me watch the first quarter, I can tell you who's probably going to win the game. And that's the problem. Is there are a lot of question marks on both of these teams. I mean, Miami and Alabama, I guess, is the other marquee game of the day. They both have questions too. I mean, King, the quarterback at Miami, just coming off an ACL. He is a small guy. I watched him play Clemson live actually last year. They had no answer for what Clemson's defense was. There were a lot of mistakes offensively for Clemson that night with Trevor and so forth. And that's the other thing, man. When you go back and watch Clemson, they were really good last year. And then you look at the people that were making plays; they're
gone.
they're not there. Yeah. So the question is, are the people that are replacing them as good? At running back, the answer is definitely no. At quarterback, I think the answer is definitely no, but not like in a real mean kind of deceit, nasty
Right.
way. It's just not as good as Trevor Lawrence. That's okay.
Yeah.
But
I think the kid's going to be a first round pick. Probably not number one overall, but he's got an NFL arm. There's no doubt
yeah,
about
I
that.
think he's an NFL guy for sure. I don't know if he's a first round guy or not. I think he has the potential to be, but we don't know. I mean, one issue with DJ Uagalele is that we've not seen him against a defense like this. Notre Dame's defense isn't like this. So, and Georgia's seen offenses like Clemson's. They just haven't been very successful against them. So we're gonna see. I mean, it's really a matter of how good is Trevor Lawrence's replacement, and does he have help that he needs? Because all quarterbacks need help. I mean, I'm not sure who I'd rather be right now coming in this game between DJ and JT with all these initials flying around. I mean, would you rather have the bulk of your receivers, or would you rather have running backs? Because Clemson is healthy completely. They just don't have the backs of Georgia. Georgia's not healthy, and when they're not healthy, they don't have the receivers of Clemson. That's for sure.
I think they'd probably take a great offensive line before either
Well,
one.
neither of
But
these have great offensive lines. I
right,
think Georgia's is closer to that than Clemson's, but
yeah, I'd have to give Georgia's offensive line the edge. Don't know a ton about Clemson's offensive line. I know they had some guys leave this and that and transfer. But I don't think it's a group that they are very, thrilled about going into a game against Georgia with just monsters in size in the middle and guys who can get after the passer off the edge. I mean, Georgia absolutely has the pieces. So it'll be interesting to see, what they come up with Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart, what kind of blitzes, whatever they can do to get after JT, because they've got guys who have been in the system now. They should be
yeah,
able to dial up whatever they need, and these guys should be able to pull it off. So we'll see.
yeah, it's a good defense at Georgia, but they're going up against some serious firepower for sure, man. And that's there's the thing about Clemson is, and everybody wants to give them grief about playing in the ACC and whatever else, but they can when you can score, you can score, and defense, you can always, I feel like, stop the run if you want to. And that doesn't mean you're going to stop offenses. So that's the thing for Georgia, dude. If they can straight up play with 4 down linemen against Clemson's offensive line and figure out how to get pressure, Clemson's going to have a long night. I'm not sure you're going to be able to do that the entire time. And then I don't know who Clemson's pass rushers are, but this is an exterior of the Georgia offensive line that you should be able to pressure some at
Well,
least.
it's full of 5-star guys,
Yeah,
for sure. KJ Henry,
yeah.
Miles Murphy, Brian Bursey, all those guys. They're guys that Georgia wanted. My question is, when's the last time Georgia's defense, helped beat an elite quarterback? I think DJ is an elite quarterback in this game right now. Was it Kyle Trask in 2019? They got lit up by the only 2 good quarterbacks they saw last year.
Well,
When's the last time?
I'll say that the Alabama offense was. Clemson's never had an offense like
Unstoppable.
that. Yeah,
But
nobody did. If you want to call Kyle Trask elite, he would be one. Tua Tagovailoa in 2018 for sure. They shut him down big time. Every time they played Tua, with the exception of the one throw, he had a hard time against Georgia. Is Tua elite? I don't know. Baker Mayfield. I don't know that they shut Baker down, but
in the second half, they
yeah, they
did.
did in the second
Yeah,
half.
But again, we're going back
Ian
4
Book
years.
is Ian Book elite?
Not elite. He was, I
Okay.
think, between good and very good.
Well, the problem is you don't play a lot of elite quarterbacks, because didn't play Justin, didn't play Trevor, played Mac Jones, who had a lot more success than Tua ever thought about having against Georgia. Yeah, it's tough when you have a good quarterback. If DJ's elite, is JT?
Say that one more time.
If DJ is elite, does that make JT elite?
I think, yeah, I think the elite are what, the top 5, 6 quarterbacks in the country.
I think the quarterbacks took a step back for sure this year. I
Yeah,
don't think I'm unique in saying that, but
right. These guys wouldn't be labeled elite in a lot of years, but in a down year for college football, I think if
I
you're
think
talking about the top 5 or 6, both those two are probably in that mix.
in the 8 quarters that Kyle Trask played Georgia, 6 of them were pretty tough. 6 of them were pretty tough.
Yeah.
And maybe even they scored a bunch of points in that second quarter of the 2020 game. He threw a pick six. He played well against Georgia in 2020. They just didn't score a lot in 2019. They didn't score at all, hardly in the second half, I feel like. Go back and watch that game. That Florida game was.
Well, they scored just late. The 2 touchdowns late, I think.
I don't think it was 2 touchdowns, man. I mean, they got up a lot, whatever it was. I can't remember it off the top of my head. I know this. It was not an impressive ending to that game from Florida or Georgia. And that was an ugly game in the second half. But by then, it felt like it was over. Amazingly, it felt like in the second, once you went to the halftime, it was over. But they've got to play well against DJ. And if Boston College can him up, if Notre Dame can, I mean, him up is a basic term. If they can slow down Clemson, if Notre Dame did not slow him down at Notre Dame, he scored. They just didn't run.
Yeah.
If Boston College can slow down Clemson, then Georgia should be able to. But they're lethal, and they can really score. And the question is, can Georgia? And we don't really know if we know that, man. Honestly.
Yeah, there's a lot up in the air. But I go back to, I think if this game is in Athens, I think Georgia wins. If this game is in Death Valley, I guess they're the Kroger brand, Death Valley, they probably have the advantage. I do think it's going to be really interesting in Charlotte. 50-50 fans, I guess. I mean, the best team is definitely going to win this game. But it's which team slows down the other offense, who can find a way to get a turnover or two. There's going to be a few game-changing plays, like in every game.
Yeah.
Which team is going to make those?
Yeah, we don't know, but we can tell you to go to the website. Make sure you're signing in for Dog Post. We'll see you over there.